Hello, everyone. This is Rosa Garza Moreno on behalf of the Messy Conversations planning team. Welcome to our second winter session today. And before introductions and getting into the session, I wanted to share some announcements that the team wants to share with you. One of them is a reminder of that we welcome volunteer members in this committee. If you email Messy Conversations email account, we can take some volunteers for this planning team. As always, is open. Um, the other announcement is that starting this coming Monday, we are kicking off Black History Month with the first of three sessions with an amazing lineup. And those sessions were designed and will be facilitated by alum and planning team member Clarence Williams, that is here in the room somewhere. I saw him. Thank you, Clarence, for organizing those. And then about today's session, as you know, our sessions, how we have a lot of people that haven't been in the room before, and we welcome you. Just a reminder, our format is we spend around 30 minutes going conversation with our guests, and then the last 30 minutes are gonna be for more interaction with the audience. And you feel free to post comments, questions in the chat that we are gonna be taking on as the flow goes. But let's see how it goes. This okay? So we welcome Sarah Schulman, acclaimed writer, playwright, historian, and longtime activist. Uh, we saw you, Sarah, also in the residency for the MFA Antioch MFA program this last season. So, you know us, you are no stranger in the room. And guys, you might find lots of details about her impressive resume in the link that you're gonna see here on the Google page of the session. And these conversations can take many directions with someone like Sarah. Really, today we focus on how movements, communities, and relationships navigate difference, accountability, and collective struggle without collapsing into punishment or disengagement. And then those are some of the themes that come from the fantasy and necessity of solidarity that Sarah created, the book that published last year. And before we start, Sarah, please say hello before we start with some opening question or provocation, and then we take it from there.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm in Chicago right now. It's extremely cold and happy to be with you.
Oh, thank you. So this session was planned by student and planning team member Holly Homart. And on her behalf, we have some opening questions. And the first one is your definition of solidarity, Sarah, that we can start off with, and then we take it from there.
All right. Well, there's an old-fashioned idea about solidarity, which is horizontal. And it's based on the idea that you have like the workplace and there's the boss. And if the workers all unite, then they can get better working conditions from the boss. But now the boss is a global conglomerate. So sometimes horizontal solidarity is still effective, but sometimes it's not enough. And you have to be working with people who are coming from different experiences. So the two main groups I'm thinking of are bystanders, which are people who are not implicated, but they recognize that there's an injustice. And the second group would be conflicted perpetrators. In my case, that would be like Jews relating to Palestinian liberation who feel that we need to speak out. And that's why I belong to the group Jewish Voice for Peace, which is an anti-Zionist Jewish group. We're seeing in Minneapolis people who are US citizens but object, or all around the country, people who object to the terrible oppression and brutality against immigrants and who are putting themselves on the line because they're conflicted perpetrators. So what in this new kind of solidarity, the relationships are inherently unequal, and that means that they're by definition fraught. So in order to make solidarity more doable, which is the purpose of my book, I'm trying to strip away all the ideas of heroism and perfection, which don't exist anyway, by the way. They're all myths anyway, but they keep people from being involved. And if we can understand that solidarity is a relationship that's building infrastructure for the future, and that it's going to be a fraught relationship, then we recognize that it's a process of self-criticism, making mistakes, and going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. A follow-up question that what is required beyond language, symbols, or visibility?
What is required? Well,
Yeah,
the
for solidarity. What is required when you?
goal is to be effective. You
Mhm.
do not need pure motive. You do not need the perfect answer, but the goal is to be effective. And there's a couple of ways to think about being effective that we can learn from history. My primary source is the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, the AIDS activist movement of the 1980s and early 90s, which was a movement of profoundly oppressed people who succeeded in forcing the country to change against its will. And some of the things we can learn from them about being effective, I could just lay that out a little bit. The first thing is you should become the expert on your issue. Don't ask the powers that be to fix it for you because they won't. And it's infantilizing. They don't know how and they don't want to. So you need to become the expert and come up with the solutions that are reasonable, winnable, and doable. And then you offer your solutions to the powers that be. And when they say no, that's when you do direct action. Now, one of the things this is what's called a campaign. You have a demand, it's winnable. You do actions to advance your demand so that your actions have a purpose. And one of the mistakes that people make is to gather everybody together, get all this energy to have one demonstration or something, but it's not tied to a demand. And this really dissipates people's energy. So one of the ways of trying to be effective is to have winnable demands that you are working towards in a campaign where your actions are tied to those demands. So that's one thing that really helps. Another thing is, ACT UP, because people had AIDS and they were suffering and they were dying and the clock was ticking, really didn't waste its time with theoretical debate. It went action first. When you go action first, your theory will emerge because you have to make decisions about how you're going to do your action, and that coheres your values. But if you go theory first, then you can get polarized when nothing is at stake. So I would say going action first is also very helpful. And then the final takeaway from ACT UP, and I did write a 600-page history book about ACT UP. It's called Let the Record Show, and I was in ACT UP, is that it was not a consensus-based movement. Movements need to be flexible. They have to have a bottom line, but they have to accept difference. And that's what radical democracy is, the recognition of difference with a bottom line. Because all movements historically that have tried to force everybody into one analysis or one strategy have all failed, and there's no exceptions to that because people are different, and that's like the hardest thing in the world to accept. Like I've been in therapy for 40 years trying to accept that other people are different, but they are. And real leadership is something that helps people be effective from where they're at, because people can only be where they're at. So trying to force them to be somewhere where they're not is not going to work. So we need movements that have a bottom line, but that are flexible. So that if you want to do something and I don't like your idea, I don't have to do it. I shouldn't try to stop you from doing it. I just don't have to do it. And I can get my 5 people to do my idea. And if your movement is flexible enough, you can accommodate a simultaneity of response where different people are doing different actions, all with the same bottom line, but based on who they are, what their aesthetics are, what milieus they are functioning in. etc. And the more strategies, the better, I think.
Thank you, Sarah. Clarence, we go with you in a moment. I just wanted to follow with this part of the conversation with Sarah about consensus. Uh, you have been dealing a lot with this issue of thinking a lot and working a lot around the issue of consensus building, or how does it work? I wonder if you did a little bit of a reflection about why, where does it need for consensus or fixation about consensus or embracement or need for consensus comes from, how it takes shape in us.
I don't know historically, but I will say that in our reality right now, we're in the middle of a fascist cataclysm, and it impacts basically every community in this country. So to demand that you can only work with people if they see the world the way you do and they have your agenda is absurd. It's absolutely impossible. So we have to stand with other people when we agree with them, and when we don't, move away and do our own strategies ourselves. But the worst thing that we can do is factionalize.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Clarence, please, you have a question, comment, or the hand was unintended?
No, it was actually intended. I was just going to applaud Sarah, by pointing out to us that it is the differences sometimes you have to recognize within a movement in order to engage the populace that you're trying to be effective with. And something that points out in my mind, as a child who was rooted in the labor movement as well as the civil rights movement, and that is you have to meet people where they are and understand in order to create the right optics, you have to look at the differences on how you engage people. An example would be the labor movement. The way that the, say, Ask Me affects a labor strike is very different than what the Teamsters might do. So there are many, many,
Oh,
many different ways of getting to the same result if you recognize who you're dealing with within your movement. And that's, like you said, Sarah, those have been the most impactful movements, the ones that utilize the optics based on who they're engaging. Even the women's movement, if we look back and see how the white suffragette jets were composed to the Ida B. Wells led, African American women and the optics thereof, and how that movement was either stalled or moved forward by the understanding of who these women were and how they could be effective. So it's really, that's just my thought that you've evoked, Sarah. Thank you.
yeah, well, there's a great book on that called Vanguard by Martha Jones about Black women and the fight for women's suffrage. I think that one of the examples right now that we're is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has been the enemy of women. It's been anti-gay. But this new Pope Leo is incredible on immigration. And in Chicago, priests are going and confronting ICE, and it's a very, very active role. So for someone like myself, who's not a friend of the Catholic Church, I have to be able to stand with them around immigration, something that we agree on, and walk away when it gets to abortion.
Thank you, Sarah, for that example. And do you see currently other examples of that? I was thinking about these clerics that were in the airport in Minnesota
Yeah,
too.
there's so much. I mean, there's the popular movement against ICE is very, very broad. It has people from all kinds of places, and they have one thing that they agree on, which is to stop the brutality. And after that, they probably don't agree on very much.
It's an interesting example of consensus beyond the difference. Oh. Anyone else has some comment, question now at this time, guys? I was thinking about repetitive thinking that you mentioned in your book, the concept of repetitive thinking, and that is part of the seed that keeps perpetuating issues. How does it work?
Well, you're talking about the politics of repetition or
Yeah.
repetitive thinking. There's two different things.
Not repetitive thinking.
You mean like in art, how art is repetitive, or do you mean? Oh,
When
okay. So I think what you mean, yeah. So there's a politics of repetition, which is that there's it's very hard for things to change in this society. And like women's condition can only improve when men are forward thinking. And people of color in this country, no matter how well organized they are, it's only when the majority, if the majority was white at that time, that's changing now, are forward thinking, that those things transform. That's the structure of our society, whether we like it or not. And so we have an enormous leap, and then we have 40 years of give back. And because the zeitgeist is something that you can't force, unfortunately.
For
So during those years of give back, we often practice the politics of repetition, where we're not able to advance, but we're trying to articulate our basic values. And that does build infrastructure. I mean, one of the things that's been really interesting about the Palestine Solidarity Movement, which I am part of, is that some of these core organizations like Students for Justice in Palestine or Jewish Voice for Peace are 30 years old. These groups have been working for 30 years to articulate analyses, to publish books, to develop strategies like boycott, divestment, sanctions, to develop concepts like pinkwashing. And now, when students and younger people are coming to understand that the US is funding the genocide in Gaza, there's a pre-existing infrastructure of information that is waiting for them because people practice this politics of repetition in that period.
such an interesting concept. We Holly, before going with you, we have Asa has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Sarah. And also, as a anti-Zionist Jew in academia, I just want to thank you for all the work you've done and the bravery, because that kind of opens up a space for others to be public and to claim that space back. And I just really appreciate you and all your work. And there was a section in the book that I found really interesting. And I was wondering if you could expand upon this idea of the problem of criteria. And one way it popped up for me was in looking at Minneapolis and like the way sometimes after these horrific state violence, there's all this justification for the murders and like, oh, it didn't meet this criteria or this criteria. And I was maybe linking that, but I was wondering if you could expand on that maybe more broadly.
Well, it dawned on me because, for 25 years I taught at the City University of New York. And that is a school that is open admissions. So anybody with a GED can go. So when I would walk into my classroom, I never knew who was going to be in there. And I'd have, 30 to 35 students ranging in age from 19 to 60. Some would read and write 4 languages. Some had never read a book before. I mean, it was a wide range of people, and you develop a pedagogy of learning how to teach who's in front of you. When I got to Northwestern 4 years ago, now I'm at the end of my career now, and I came to this very wealthy school. It's very competitive. I teach in an MFA program that's fully funded, but we have 474 applicants for 2 spots. I didn't know what to expect because I had never been in a system where there was criteria for someone going to school. And once I started to experience it, I realized that open admissions is better. It's better to have a wide range of people with different experiences in the classroom. And that this criteria was limiting. And it was just a way of creating austerity. And so when I started to think about it, I realized that just as the point that you made, people have to earn the right to have health insurance in this country. People have to earn the right to have a place to live. All of this fake criteria, it's completely unnecessary. I believe in open doors and open borders, and that we shouldn't have to make people prove that they deserve to be able to contribute their gifts and receive what they need.
Thank you, Sarah. We have people appreciating this comment that you just made. And thank you, Asa, for bringing that up. Yeah. Um, what points of resistance do you find the most prominent to this line of openness that you try, well, you live by it. So what kinds of points of resistance are the most like nagging there?
Supremacy ideology masquerading as reality. That is the obstacle. People who believe that they are inherently more deserving or superior, and yet they think that that's the objective reality. And this is what we face all the time. And what we're seeing with this kind of very magnified and intense form of state violence, this concentrated state violence that we're seeing right now, these types of people from the top down, from Trump down to ICE, are people who cannot tolerate being opposed. They consider someone telling them that what they're doing is wrong to be an assault. And that's what, once you give them weapons, that's what in their minds justifies violence. And I wrote this book called Conflict is Not Abuse, which is something that I believe that, if the only way you can live in a world where no one opposes you is a world with no difference. And that means that everyone around you is suppressed. A healthy world is a world in which we're all uncomfortable all the time because we're constantly coexisting with difference and we don't see it as abuse.
Mm, remarkable. There are many directions we can take in a few minutes before the half an hour. Is there any particular direction you want to go? Or elaborate on any point here? Because, well, one that I would like you to indulge me, and I think I'm not speaking just by myself, but I'm very interested in this, the landscape that you describe and the kind of authoritarian energy that we are experiencing has been put on steroids, courtesy of digital media. And what is your take on that? Because when you think about organizing and resisting, the other side of the equation, there are wonderful tools the internet brought up. And then what about these other tools that are help propagate the oppressive message?
I mean, I think the long view experience of living under capital is that technology can be used for good or for evil. It's not the technology itself that has the inherent value. It's how it's used. I know that Twitter is how I find out what's going on in Gaza. And if I didn't have Twitter, I wouldn't know. So even as evil as it is, that's how I can build relationships and get information that I need. And, as long as I just did a book tour, which was very interesting. I did 29 cities over 6 months. And, there's now an independent bookstore in almost every city in the country, and it's within the last 4 years. The whole kind of Barnes and Nobleization or Amazonization of books is really on a downswing. And the reason people are building these often collective run community-based independent bookstores everywhere is because people are lonely and they want relationship and they want to be together in the same room. And it's exciting to go from place to place. Often the kinds of cities that in my generation get queer people or artists had to flee these places. Now they're attracting young progressive people in their 20s because they're affordable. And the kind of cities that my generation went to are completely, the doors are closed because they're not affordable. So we're seeing, cities like Columbus, Ohio, and Pittsburgh and Salt Lake City having these kind of queer lives, and St. Louis having, independent arts movements, because people want to be in relationship, and that's a very exciting thing. Montgomery, Alabama, for example. It's like the country is like red states with blue cities. That's kind of what I observed from traveling around.
What an interesting finding, your tour. Mhm.
I'm gonna jump in, everybody. This is
Thank you.
Holly. I'm off camera. I'm under the weather, but I just really love, I think what you're speaking to right there, where red states with blue cities. I think as someone who is originally from the South, who moved to the Pacific Northwest for a different culture to raise her two white boys and then get out here and like want to really connect with the politics or the there's a cultural thing that I want differently for my kids than what I was raised in. And it's not as back to like the necessity and fantasy. Like I can go into all these really liberal communities, but they're still hating on white men. And yet here I am as a mom trying to figure out how to raise them. And while I have these, cared as a queer person, this shared common vision of what it means to be a woman and queer, I also really need people that can hold the both and of what it is to be with the people of the white boys. And it's often like really finding those communities of where I can show up and I can be with people and I can be in connection with the values, but also we're not going to agree on everything. And so I just really appreciated you talking about how we're really coming together to be with each other. And
Well, there's
just
plenty of
all over the
documentation
place.
of white men who've done great things. I mean, ACT UP was a white gay male organization. According to my research, I did interview 188 surviving members of ACT UP over 18 years. So I feel like I do understand what happened there. It's probably the white male organization that won the most victories for women and poor people and people of color in American history. So you can show your sons our movie, United in Anger, A History of ACT UP, and there's their model.
Do you guys have comments, questions?
I
see
think Bonnie
Bonnie has
has,
a hand raised.
yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Oh,
Having so many thoughts. Can you hear me okay?
yes, Bonnie.
Okay. Yes, I want to appreciate your work and your coming to speak with us today. And maybe I'll just react to a couple of things you said earlier that really resonated with me about why do people have to prove they're worthy of health insurance? And I wonder if there's things we can do at Antioch that model not making people prove things like having to have your disabilities documented so that you can have access to a fully rich educational experience that works for you. And I just thought of that off the top of my head. I'm sure that's going to be a question I reflect on for a while.
Our new amazing mayor of New York, Mamdani, I mean, in 2 weeks, he's gotten free childcare, which you don't have to prove anything to access. He's given out 1,500 free theater tickets. He's building public bathrooms. I mean, the guy is incredible, and his whole approach is making the world an open door. And of course, real estate is trying to stop him, but the people of New York are incredibly proud of him. It's really an exciting place to be right now, and he's been putting out videos about ICE, and he's really quite remarkable. So I think it's in that, maybe that's where we're going towards, like
That
back
would
to
be
our
amazing.
children. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And I just really also resonated with your comment about connecting what you said, people are lonely. Like this is why these independent bookstores are coming to big cities. And
Right.
this is why we use social media, and how we use it is really important. And I just feel that that is inextricably tied to these people who can't tolerate being opposed. Like there's so much brokenness in people who, like our political leaders right now, that
Mm.
it could come from many places, but I expect a lot of it comes from trauma and, personal experience. And how do we reduce that in the world? How do we heal that? How do we prevent that? So, and is that the source? Like, I'm feeling like trauma and feeling unloved and lonely is the source of where we're at right now.
Well, this was, I
And
wrote a book about this. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't
yeah,
explain it. It's called Conflict is Not Abuse. And the center idea is that um, the inability to tolerate difference can come from supremacy or it can come from trauma. And like we understand it better when it comes from supremacy. A person is raised to believe that they should never be uncomfortable, and anyone who makes them question themselves is assaulting them. But
Mhm.
sometimes when you're traumatized, it's so hard to just keep it together that the thought of having to be self-critical feels overwhelming. And then people feel that they're being assaulted because somebody else is different. So these two, you could say oppositional experiences, although they're very related because they can both exist in the same person, result in an inability to tolerate difference. And, I think it's up to the rest of us how we respond is the best way to handle that. So, for example, if you have a friend who tells you that, their ex-boyfriend was a terrible person and was abused them and they're innocent, I mean, and you should never talk to him again and he should be kept out of the community and he's a monster and all of that, you really need to ask him. There's a couple of things there. Ask him why he thinks this is happening. Nobody ever asks people, why do you think you're being accused? Why do you think people are being asked to hurt you? That's one part. And then the other is to help your friends negotiate. Because we have a weird definition of friendship as being something that helps your friends hurt people that they're mad at. The negative bonds of cliques or families or whatever. But what if we said that real love was helping people be self-critical and negotiate? Because right now, if your person says to you, I really recognize that I helped contribute to that problem because I escalated, then a lot of people will say, well, then too bad for you. You got what you deserve. Because back to criteria, we have a thing where people have to be eligible for compassion. And the only way you can be eligible if you're 100% pure, innocent victim. But the truth is, everybody deserves compassion, no matter what. So if you can give your people in your life support to be self-critical and hug them and love them when they are, instead of saying, oh, well, that's what you deserve, then we're encouraging each other to negotiate.
Mhm.
But I'm amazed at how often people ask me to hurt other people. People are like, oh, you can't invite them to the party, or why are you working with her? Or why did you put that person on the panel? I mean, they constantly asking instead of saying, hey, can you help me negotiate with this person?
What about your point, Sarah Beth, about supremacy? Would you like to bring it up?
Well, I think I made the point that, people are raised to believe that they shouldn't have to be uncomfortable. That's a supremacy position.
No, no, no.
But
Sorry,
people,
sorry. I meant Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth had a comment
Sarah
that
Beth.
I apologize for
No worries.
unclear. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to be in a room with another Sarah. Uh,
Ah,
so I just wrote add a system built of supremacy that validates supremacy and trauma. And you have a working system of oppression that we see everywhere in response to your comment about those two ways it gets built. And I think this is so insightful. And, I am from Minnesota and I saw those 100 clerics being oppressed and arrested. And those were people I worked with there before I left. And many of them are older folks who have been organizing in their community for generations. And now there's so many young people who have joined the protests and that have been activated by their community members saying, help us. How can we talk to our relatives? We can't get the A number that they need to access people in these systems. We can't get money to them to be able to pay an attorney to get out once they're taken in. And listening to some of the accounts of attorneys trying to fight for immigrants that have been caught up with ICE, this has just been on my mind. Because there's a way in, there's a way out, but when there's oppression, there's neither. And people become stuck in a place by themselves. And to be able to negotiate, we have to work together, and we don't always have to work with people that we love to work with. And so I appreciate your naming all those complexities. Thank you.
Also, I mean, we've been watching Israeli soldiers murdering Palestinian civilians on mass media for years now with American money and American weapons. And this is time to make the connection, people.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is such a timely conversation.
Zoe has her hand up.
Yes, we have a Zoe.
Hello, hello. I haven't quite figured out how to word my question, but I'm going to give it my best go. One of the things that I'm curious about is this idea of expertise and really knowing an issue that you want to support or navigate. And one of the other things that comes up for me in relation to expertise is classism and this idea that in order to be the best person to talk on a subject, you have to be able to speak about it eloquently and delicately and have like a degree behind you. And it sounds like you are currently having this, where you're currently working is there's a lot of students, I would guess, who come in with some amount of that privilege and class. And it sounds like where you were previously working, you were just kind of adapting to who was there. And I'm just kind of wondering how you navigate this idea of having a lot of knowledge book-wise and
Well, you're bringing up a lot of different things.
yeah.
So the first thing is expertise. So let's say, for example, you want your university to divest from their holdings in Israel. You need to look at what happened that made them divest from South Africa. What happened that made them divest from fossil fuels? They know how to do it. It's been won in the past. How can you learn from that to build a campaign that can be effective? That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with some of the things that you mentioned, right? It's just finding out how people did things and learning from them. In our program, so in Northwestern, I work with Daisy Hernandez, if you know her incredible work. She has a new book on citizenship that's just coming out next month. That's unreal. But anyway, we decided when we first got there, well, we realized that if we didn't recruit students and we only waited for applications to come in, everybody was going to be someone who graduated from Brown 2 weeks ago, and we didn't want that. So we started holding community meetings in like Pilsen Community Bookstore, which is in a gentrifying Latinx neighborhood, in Women and Children First, which is the feminist bookstore, and going to public undergrads in the Chicago area and speaking to creative writing classes to try to recruit people who maybe never heard of an MFA. And we realized that if we got people who already lived in Chicago, our chances of getting low income people was higher. People who didn't have to move. Our chances of getting older people, maybe who have families or whatever, was higher. So, we've just been trying to figure it out because a fully funded MFA, there's 53 programs in the country that are fully funded. And that's the biggest pot of money for writing in the United States of America. But it's very incoherent, that money, because the groups have never gotten together and talked about it. So each program is doing it their own way, and it's not coherent right now. It's not functioning the way it should. We should be thinking about what voices need to be heard, what kind of work needs to be developed, who do we want to give this money to, but we haven't had that discussion hasn't happened. So, all of those issues. I mean, in my case, so I only have a bachelor's and it's from Empire State College, State University of New York. However, because I've published 21 books, I now hold an endowed chair in creative writing at Northwestern. So you say book knowledge, but I actually have learned a lot by writing all those books. So I feel confident that I can really help students and that I understand a lot about how a book is written. But but when you are working with so few people, it really is a one-on-one relationship where you have to individuate each person and help them understand how to create the book that they need to write.
Rick, thank you so much, Sarah.
I do want to tell people that every summer I teach a 1 week boot camp in prose writing, fiction and nonfiction at the Provincetown Fine Arts Work Center. And the register is only open to people who've never worked with me before. And registration is January 28th at 9 a.m. And the class is August 9th to 14th. So if you want to take this class with me, you got to get on there at January 28th at 9 a.m. because it fills up by the end of the day. There's only 10 slots. But it's just a way, it's first come, first served, so there's no requirements or anything. And it's any level, it's all levels. So if you've never written anything, you can come. And if you've published 10 books, you can come and you'll get something out of it. Because I use this pedagogy that I developed at CUNY.
I would like later to talk about that pedagogy of teaching whoever is in the room, but we have Rick that was bringing up something.
Rick, your mic's not on.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah. I'm also an Empire State college graduate, by the way. So,
Oh, great.
yeah, dance studies, 1997, I think it was. But my question is, you mentioned hierarchy, you mentioned privilege, you mentioned trauma. I'm just wondering what you think helps people tolerate discomfort.
As I said, I think it has to do with the people around them.
Okay.
I think if the people around them create a negative bond where their friendship is based on shunning and punishing people, then they won't be able to tolerate it. But if their friendship is there to help them be self-critical and negotiate, it helps a lot if the people around you really want you to lower the hostilities with other people.
You. There's a lot of activity in the chat, Sarah. And in the lines of conflict, like the conflict is not abuse, there's acknowledgement of that. Asa, do you want to go back to that one? To your comment?
Caught up, so why don't you just decide?
Excuse me?
I'm not caught up on the chat, so why don't you
No,
just...
no, no, don't worry. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I can bring that in unless I was it's a point actually I think you made in the book and maybe connected already, but just the application of conflict is not abuse that I've seen most viscerally in my life is around the anti-Zionism and the way that sometimes an anti-Zionist message is framed or taken as anti-Semitic. And I often see this rooted in that inability to process someone not thinking the same way as someone else as a direct attack on their person.
Well, that's propaganda.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody in Hasbara, which is Israeli think tank, thought that up, and it caught on. But what's interesting is when you debate, when an anti-Zionist Jewish person debates with a Zionist, which is something I've done quite a bit, the goal is not to change their mind. The goal is to create a theater of ideas for the audience so that you can unveil, and it's not hard to do. You can very quickly show that their position is located in some kind of sense of supremacy. that they believe in different levels of rights based on people's religion. And maybe because I was born in the 1950s, but that's the one all-American thing that I've always internalized is freedom of religion, that everyone should have equal access regardless of their religion, as a religious minority myself in this country. So it doesn't take long to expose that. And I think it's very illuminating for the audience and helps them move forward.
Thank you for
Yeah, I was just thinking of Zoran Mamdani's answer when asked like if Israel has a right to exist, and he said, any state with equal rights for all citizens, and people got so mad at that, and it's like it's exposed right there. Yeah,
that's it.
So there's appreciation, Sarah, for the conflict is not abuse concept. People mentioning that we have access to that in our university in the audiobook, and the appreciation of that here. Wonder if we could. Sorry. I wanted to acknowledge also from the chat, Anastasia has been sharing some resources here. Thank you, Anastasia. Pay attention to the chat it has these resources too. And wonder, Sarah, if you want to share with us a little bit, because we are an educational institution that we love our students and our learn about teaching practices. Would you like to elaborate a little bit about teaching whoever is in the room pedagogy?
Yes. So my own university education was that I started at the University of Chicago in the 1970s when it was 7-to-1 male to female. And it was a quote core curriculum that only had one woman, and that was Sappho in the pre-Socratics. I dropped out of there. I went to Hunter College in New York City, and Audre Lorde was my college professor. This is in 1982.
Oh.
And this is where I learned how to teach because she had an enormous class. It was, public university. And the first day, by the second class, she knew everybody's name. And I realized, oh, yeah, that's how you have to go. Because people were saying things like, I have been here for 4 years and no one has ever known my name. And then she would put everyone in a circle. And I always did, this is for large class size. This is the way to go. You put people in a circle so they can't disappear in the back row, especially now with phones, right? She would stand in the middle and she would teach each person individually throughout the course of the day. So she'd like call on someone and say, like you said in your paper last week, blah, 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 blah. Or remember last week you said da 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 da. And so there was that moment in each class where she'd look you in the eye and individuate you. And that was incredible. And I taught like that for 25 years.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience, so powerful experience.
I'll also tell you something really funny about Audre. So one day she said, okay, class, open your notebooks. So we all open our notebooks. And she's like, write this down. That you can't fight City Hall is a rumor being spread by City Hall. And we all had to write that down.
Remarkable. People keep sharing resources here. Lisa?
Hey, Dr. Sarah, thank you for being here. My question is, earlier, you mentioned that to look at ways of organizing, past methods of how an issue was handled in order to perhaps approach new ways and to excel what your issue is. So what I would like to know is, because of the condition of fascism and authoritarianism in this country right now, during the Civil Rights era and with the Black Panthers, what did they do that you feel can can also be done in today's environment, and what what should we do that's different from what was done previously, precisely because of the different conditions in this country, and how can we learn?
Okay, those are like enormous questions, right? So I can just dip my toe in. Well, in Letter from Birmingham Jail, Dr. King lays out his vision of direct action. And interestingly, it's very similar to ACT UP's vision of direct action. It's about making a demand that's real, bringing it to the powers that be, and then when they say no, he would say you have to go through a self-purification process, which in ACT UP, which would be a nonviolent civil disobedience training. And then you do a nonviolent theatrical action that communicates through the media to the public that you have a reasonable solution. Now, probably the most successful example of this in American history is Black students sitting in at segregated lunch counters, at white-only lunch counters. Because the image that they create, they could have just marched around out front holding up signs, and they did have a picket. But by doing the actual direct action, they created the image of the world they wanted to create. And that's why those pictures are transcend all time and are so powerful. And that helps us figure out how we want to communicate through the media to the public. Now, something that's going on right now that is a correction on the past that I think is terrific is for years, people would all go to Washington to march on Washington. It was very expensive and it took a lot of time. Now, with this No King's Day concept, it's having local actions everywhere, but simultaneously. And I think that's a great innovation. I really do.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? We are a few minutes from closing. Before that, I just remind you that Brad, thank you for posting Sarah's workshop, her summary workshop, for those that would like to be part of this inclusive space that she created. It's in the chat. I'm reposting here for those that enter later. Thank you. Comments that we are missing, guys? It's such a timely session, such a rich conversation. We like to stay for a longer time.
No, I just want to say that if anybody out there is from anywhere in America where there's an independent bookstore and you'd like me to come, just email me on my Northwestern email. I'm very easy to find, and I'll try to work it out.
Independent store. We have a partner independent store here in LA that is very close to us. So we are going to send you that information, and we know others. We have a comment from Arian, and Arian.
Hi there. Just like kind of like a final question. Just kind of one I had similar to the last meeting that just kind of felt important. I guess like if there's just one thing that I think could be pulled from this, that is something we could maybe incorporate with what we do today, this week, in this present moment. If there's something like this first step that maybe like you, Sarah, would suggest we kind of take from this to try to like move forward with action rather than just kind of like gathering education passively?
Well, I mean, I have a suggestion. I obviously don't know the answer, right? But I think this is a great time to join pre-existing organizations. I really do. And you don't have to agree with everything that they say or everything that they do. Like I joined Jewish Voice for Peace. I've never belonged to a Jewish organization before. I'm not into religious stuff. I ignore that part of it. But it's been an incredible experience for me. I've been in it for a long time now, and I find it very, very inspiring. And there's a lot of groups out there. There's many that have been around for a long time. If you hate everybody and you don't want to join anything, then I would say get together with three friends once a week and read the newspaper and talk about it. Just to build relationship. That's really what we need to do.
Thank you. Jamila, would you like to represent your comment yourself?
Yes, I know Toadstool Bookshop because I've been to McDowell. They're a great store. Yeah, in Peterborough.
Rosa, were you talking about the one about training?
Yeah, you mentioned something about training.
Yeah, so it was building on a comment about looking at sit-ins. So one of the really powerful thing about the sit-ins was that we don't, and I think that we don't understand broadly is all of the training that went into that action before the sit-in happens. So without understanding the amount of time that it takes to prepare, I don't think people understand the work that goes into the effective action, which then I think builds on the idea of being able to join organizations. What are people already doing? And you will get both knowledge and the training to take actions.
Yeah, actually, in my book on ACT UP, which is called Let the Record Show, I have a whole chapter on that. Nonviolent civil disobedience training was the thing that many people described as the most transformative experience they had in that movement. And it really brought people together. And there are people from ACT UP, I mean, we're all older now, but there's still people in their 60s and 70s who are doing that training for any community that needs it. Yeah, you can't just go in there. You have to know each other, and you need marshals and you need legal observers, and it's very conscious.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Mm-hmm. It's not a rodeo.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for asking me, Rosa.
Lindsay, I see your hand.
Hi, and I'm about to run off to another meeting, but I just wanted to say this has been incredible. And one of the hardest things for me is actually staying close with people I disagree with, especially family members who have very strong thoughts that are opposite to mine, and just going over for dinner when I'm in their area and having these conversations any way I can is really hard and it makes me anxious. But it's one of the ways that I find I can contribute or chip away at things in the smallest way possible.
Yeah, I mean, don't drive yourself
When
crazy.
when I can't give money and I can't protest because I'm honestly worried about our safety sometimes. That's what I do, is reach out to stay close with people I just don't agree with.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to figure out what they can do. Like there was someone in
Yeah.
Akron who worked in a Xerox store.
Yeah.
And people used to bring stuff to her and she would do free Xerox. And that's what she could do. And it made a really big difference. So if
Yeah.
everyone can just figure out what they can do and do it, then it'll lead you to the next step.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have to run, but thank you. This has been really, really meaningful.
We have reached the hour, and people might be leaving suddenly. It's really appreciated everyone's here, and thanks Sarah profusely for bringing this timely concepts our way and sharing this, opening this conversation, and hope that we can keep going with more invitations like this. So we are going to stay a few minutes for those that stay hanging in, but officially the space is closing.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to go. But thank you all, everybody. I
Thank you,
really
Sarah.
take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Sarah. We will be in touch, send you independent library bookstores information. Okay,
Okay,
we
thank you.
collected a lot of those.
And
Take
we'll
care.
be here next week, everybody, at noon. We're doing race, equity, and dance. So if you have time next week, join us at noon or 3 p.m., depending on your coast.
Mhm. Or dance first, equity later.
And to
Thank
further
you.
accentuate your commercial, to our panelists are legendary from way to screen to television. They have a incredible career and we have a lot to impart. So do yourself a favor and join in.
Thank you.
And there'll be some surprises, which I'm not telling anyone about.
It says, thank you for the quote that you posted in the chat. Because there was a point about like, what do we do with this wonderful session, right? Thank you.
And thank you, Brad.